A husband and wife who work for the circus go to an adoption agency looking to adopt a child, but the social workers there raise doubts about their suitability. So the couple produce photos of their 50-foot motorhome, which is clean and well-maintained and equipped with a beautiful nursery. The social workers are satisfied by this, but then raise concerns about the kind of education a child would receive while in the couple's care. The husband puts their mind at ease, saying, "We've arranged for a full-time tutor who will teach the child all the usual subjects along with French, Mandarin, and computer skills." Next, though, the social workers express concern about a child being raised in a circus environment. This time, the wife explains, "Our nanny is a certified expert in pediatric care, welfare, and diet." The social workers are finally satisfied and ask the couple, "What age child are you hoping to adopt?" The husband says, "It doesn't really matter, as long as the kid fits in the canon." A Scotsman phones a dentist to inquire about the cost for a tooth extraction. £85 for an extraction, sir," the dentist replied. 85 quid. Have you not got anything cheaper?" "That's the normal charge," said the dentist. "What about if you didn't use any anesthetic? That's unusual, sir, but I could do it and would knock £15 off." "What about if you used one of your dentist trainees and still without any anesthetic? I can't guarantee their professionalism, and it'll be painful, but the price could drop by £20. "How about if you make it a training session and have your student do the extraction with the other students watching and learning?" "It'll be good for the students," mulled the dentist. "I'll charge you £5, but it will be traumatic." "Ugh, now you're talking, laddie." "It's a deal," said the Scotsman. "Can you confirm an appointment for the wife next Tuesday, then?" At a wedding ceremony, the priest asked if there was anyone who had any reason why the marriage shouldn't go on. It was time to stand up and speak or forever hold his or her peace. The moment of utter silence was interrupted by a beautiful young woman carrying a baby. She started slowly walking toward the pastor. Everything quickly turned to chaos. The bride slapped the groom and stormed out of the church. The groom's mother fainted. The groomsmen and bridesmaids ran away in all directions. The priest asked the woman, "Can you tell us why you came forward? What do you have to say?" The woman replied, "I can't hear anything from the back, so I am moving to the front seats." Two Army boys, Leroy and Johnny, from the hills of Kentucky, were promoted right from privates to sergeants because of their great marksmanship with rifles. Not long after, they're out for a walk, and Leroy says, "Hey, Johnny, there's the NCO club. Let you and me stop in." "But we's privates," protests Johnny. "We're sergeants now," says Leroy, pulling him inside. "Now, Johnny, I'm a-going to sit down and have myself a drink." "But we're privates," says Johnny. "Are you blind, boy?" asks Leroy, pointing at his stripes. "We're sergeants now, so hush your mouth." So they have their drinks, and pretty soon a pretty young lady comes up to Leroy. "You're cute," she says, "and I'd like to date you, but I've got a bad case of gonorrhea." Leroy pulls his friend to the side and whispers, "Johnny, go look in the dictionary and see what gonorrhea means. If it's okay, give me the okay sign." So Johnny goes to look it up, comes back and gives Leroy the big okay sign. 3 weeks later, Leroy is laid up in the infirmary with a terrible case of gonorrhea. "Johnny," he says, "why did you give me the okay sign?" "Well, Leroy, in the dictionary, it says gonorrhea affects only the privates." He points to his stripes. "But we're sergeants now." The staff at a local United Way office realized that it had never received a donation from the town's most successful lawyer. The person in charge of contributions called him to persuade him to contribute and said, "Our research shows that out of a yearly income of at least $500,000, you give not a penny to charity. Wouldn't you like to give back to the community in some way?" The lawyer mulled this over for a moment and replied, "First, did your research also show that my mother is dying after a long illness and has medical bills that are several times her annual income?" Embarrassed, the United Way representative mumbled, no. "Or," the lawyer continued, "that my brother, a disabled veteran, is blind and confined to a wheelchair?" The stricken United Way representative began to stammer out an apology, but was interrupted when the lawyer added, "Or that my sister's husband died in a traffic accident," the lawyer's voice rising in indignation, "leaving her penniless with 3 children. The humiliated United Way representative, completely beaten, said simply, I had no idea. On a roll, the lawyer cut him off once again. So if I don't give any money to them, why should I give any to you? Sammy took his blonde blind date to a seaside carnival. What would you like to do first, Kim? Asked Sammy. I want to get weighed, she said. They ambled over to the weight guesser, who guessed 70 kilograms. Kim got on the scale, and it read 67 kilograms, and she won a prize. Next, the couple went on the Ferris wheel. When the ride was over, Sammy again asked Kim what she wanted to do next. I want to get weighed, she said. Back to the weight guesser they went, and because she'd been there before, the man guessed Kim's correct weight, and Sammy lost his $1. Kim and Sammy walked around the carnival, and again he asked, Where to next? Kim responded, I want to get weighed. But by this time, Sammy figured she was really weird and took her home early, dropping her off with a handshake. Her flatmate Laura asked Kim about her blind date. How did it go? She asked. Kim said, Oh, Laura, it was lousy. A few days later, he reads a notice stating that a wealthy man has lost his wallet and is offering a $50 reward to anyone who returns it. He soon locates the owner and gives him the wallet, and the rich man counts the money and says, I see you have already taken your reward. The poor old man responds, What are you talking about? The wealthy man continues, This wallet had $750 in it when I lost it. The two men begin arguing, and eventually they go to court to sort out their differences. Both men present their case, the poor man first, then the wealthy man, who concludes by saying, Your Honor, I trust you believe me, the elderly judge says. Of course. The rich man smiles, and the old poor man is devastated. Then the judge takes the wallet out of the wealthy man's hands and gives it to the poor old man who found it. What are you doing? The rich man yells angrily. The elderly judge responds, You are, of course, an honest man, and if you say that your missing wallet had $750 in it, I'm sure it did. But if the man who found this wallet is a liar and a thief, he wouldn't have returned it at all, which means that this wallet must belong to somebody else. If that man steps forward, he'll get the money, otherwise it stays with the man who found it. What about my money? The rich man asks. Well, we'll just have to wait until somebody finds your wallet with the $750 in it. An avid golfer was involved in a terrible car crash and was rushed to the hospital. Just before he was put under, the surgeon popped in to see him. I have some good news and some bad news, says the surgeon. The bad news is that I have to remove your right arm. Oh, God, no, cries the man. My golfing is over. Please, Doc, what's the good news? The good news is I have another one to replace it with, but it's a woman's arm, and I'll need your permission before I can go ahead with the transplant. Go for it, Doc, says the man, as long as I can play golf again. The operation went well, and a year later, the man was out on the golf course when he bumped into the surgeon. Hi, how's the new arm? Asks the surgeon. Just great, says the golfer. I'm playing the best golf of my life. My new arm has a much finer touch, and my putting has really improved. That's great, said the surgeon. Not only that, continued the golfer, my handwriting has improved. I've learned how to sew my own clothes, and I've even taken up painting landscapes in watercolors. That's unbelievable, said the surgeon. I'm so glad to hear the transplant was such a great success. Are you having any side effects? Well, just 2, said the golfer. I have trouble parallel parking, and every time I get in a wreck, I'll get a headache. A young girl from Donegal leaves home to find work in the bright lights of London. She comes home 6 months later and steps out of a taxi wearing a full-length mink coat. Begorra, Colleen, says her mother. 'Tis a lovely soft coat you're wearing, and it looks so expensive. Where did you get that? Colleen replies, Sure now, I won it at the bingo. Don't they have wonderful prizes in London? When the weekend's over, Colleen returns to the bright lights, but she's back to visit her mom a few months later. This time, when she steps out of the taxi, she's wearing a beautiful gold wristwatch and a large diamond ring. Same exchange with Mum. Same won it at bingo. Colleen returns to the bright lights again. A few months later, she's back. This time, she's sporting a beautiful emerald and diamond necklace with a matching bracelet and earrings. She hands her mother 1,000 pounds and explains that she won it all in bingo. Then she asks Mum to run her a bath as she needs to freshen up. When Colleen gets to the bathroom, there's only a 1/4 inch of hot water in the bath. Colleen, a wee bit peeved at her mum being so cheap with the hot water after being handed 1,000 pounds, calls downstairs, "Mum, sure now, didn't I ask you to run me a bath? There's only a 1/4 inch of water in the tub." "Indeed there is, me darling," replies her mum. "But we don't want you getting your bingo card wet now, do we?" A newlywed couple wakes up on the first morning of their honeymoon in the Caribbean and decides to take a stroll down the beach. On their way, they pass a shanty house, and sitting on the front porch is an overweight woman, stark naked, legs akimbo, eating a slice of watermelon. The husband sees this and, liking the idea of his new wife exhibiting her body in public, asks her whether she would do the same. The wife looks at him in disgust and refuses. The second morning, they pass the shanty house again, and sure enough, the overweight woman is sitting on the porch stark naked, legs akimbo, eating another slice of watermelon. Not being put off by his new wife's refusal, the husband inquires of his wife, "Why don't you go over and ask that woman what it feels like to sit there naked, letting the air waft over your p-" The wife again refuses. This continues each morning for 2 weeks until it is the last day of the honeymoon. Each morning they would pass by the woman. Each morning the husband would try to persuade his new wife to copy her, and each morning the wife would refuse. However, it being the last morning, the husband gives it one more try and inquires of his wife, "Why don't you go over and ask that woman what it feels like to sit there naked, letting the air waft over your p-" The wife finally gives in, opens the gate of the shanty house, and walks up to the overweight woman on the front porch. "What does it feel like to sit there naked, letting the air waft over your p-" she asks hesitantly. "I don't rightly know," replies the woman, "but it sure keeps the flies off of my watermelon." The other night I was invited for a night out with the girls. I told my husband that I would be home by midnight. I promise! Well, the hours passed and the margaritas went down way too easy. Around 3 a.m., a bit loaded, I headed for home. Just as I got in the door, the cuckoo clock in the hall started up and cuckooed 3 times. Quickly realizing that my husband would probably wake up, I cuckooed another 9 times. I was really proud of myself for coming up with such a quick-witted solution, even when totally smashed, in order to avoid a possible conflict with him. The next morning, my husband asked me what time I got in, and I told him midnight. He didn't seem pissed off at all. Whew, got away with that one. Then he said, "We need a new cuckoo clock." When I asked him why, he said, "Well, last night our clock cuckooed 3 times, then said, 'Oh fuck,' then cuckooed 4 more times, cleared its throat, cuckooed another 3 times, giggled, cuckooed twice more, and then tripped over the coffee table and farted." After just a few years of marriage filled with arguments, a young man and his wife decided the only way to save their marriage was to try counseling. They had been at each other's throats for some time and felt that this was their last straw. When they arrived at the counselor's office, the counselor jumped right in and opened the floor for discussion. "What seems to be the problem?" Immediately, the husband held his long face down without anything to say. In contrast, the wife began talking 90 miles an hour, describing all the wrongs within their marriage. After 15 minutes of listening to the wife, the counselor went over to her, picked her up by her shoulders, kissed her passionately, and sat her back down. Afterwards, the wife sat speechless. The marriage counselor looked over at the husband, who stared in disbelief. The counselor said to the husband, "Your wife needs that at least twice a week." The husband scratched his head and replied, "Okay, I can have her here on Tuesdays and Thursdays." Little Johnny was in his class when the teacher asked the children what their fathers did for a living. All the typical answers came up: fireman, policeman, salesman, etc. Johnny was being uncharacteristically quiet, and so the teacher asked him about his father. "My father's an exotic dancer in a gay cabaret and takes off all his clothes in front of other men. Sometimes, if an offer is really good, He'll go out to the alley with some guy and have sex with him for money." The teacher, obviously shaken by this statement, hurriedly set the other children to work on some coloring and took little Johnny aside to ask him, "Is that really true about your father?" "No," said Johnny. "He's actually a lawyer, but I was too embarrassed to say so in front of the other kids." In a hospital's intensive care unit, patients always died in the same bed on Sunday morning at about 11 a.m., regardless of their medical condition. This puzzled the doctors, and some even thought it had something to do with the supernatural. No one could solve the mystery as to why the deaths occurred around 11 a.m. on Sunday, so a worldwide team of experts was assembled to investigate the cause of the incidents. The next Sunday morning, a few minutes before 11 a.m., all of the doctors and nurses nervously waited outside the ward to see for themselves what the terrible phenomenon was all about. Some were holding wooden crosses, prayer books, and other holy objects to ward off the evil spirits. Just when the clock struck 11 o'clock, Pookie Johnson, the part-time Sunday sweeper, entered the ward and unplugged the life support system so he could use the vacuum cleaner. A father said to his daughter, "Stay away from that boyfriend of yours because he's a maniac." And the girl said, "No, Dad, he's a bit silly because he took me to the pictures last night and he bought me some wine gums." After a little while, his hand went inside my blouse and I laughed. Then his hand went inside my bra, and then he put his hand up my skirt, and I laughed, and then he put his hand inside my panties, and I laughed out loud. The father said, "Why did you keep Ruddy laughing for?" The girl said, "I knew what he was looking for, those wine gums he had bought me earlier, and they were in my handbag all the time." A husband said to his wife, "I miss my family. I hope you will prepare lunch tomorrow so I can invite them. It's been a while." The wife said with a sigh, "God willing, it will be good." The husband said, "Okay, I will invite them." The next morning, the husband went to work, and at 1 o'clock he came home and said to his wife, "Did you cook lunch? My family will come in an hour." And the wife said, "No, I did not cook, because your family are not strangers. They can eat what is in the house." The husband said, "God forgive you. Why didn't you tell me yesterday that you won't cook, and they will soon be arriving? What will I do?" The wife said, "Call them and apologize to them. After all, they are not strangers." The husband left the house upset, and after a few minutes there was a knock on the door. The wife got up, opened the door, and was surprised to see her family, brothers, sisters, and children. Her father asked her, "Where is your husband?" She said to him, "He left a while ago." Her father said, "Yesterday your husband invited us for lunch. Is it possible for him to invite us and leave the house?" The wife was stunned by the news and began rubbing her hands, puzzled that the food in the house was not befitting for her family. She called her husband and said to him, "Why didn't you tell me that you intended to invite my family for lunch?" He said to her, "My family is your family and yours is mine. There's no difference." She said to him, "Please bring ready-made food with you when coming. There is no food at home." The husband said, "I am very far from home, and your family are not strangers. Feed them from the food in the house as you wanted to feed my family." A local law enforcement officer stopped a car for traveling faster than the speed limit. Since he was in a good mood that day, he decided to give the poor guy a break and give him a warning instead of a ticket and asked the man his name. "Fred," he replied. "Fred what?" the officer asked. "Just Fred," the man responded. When the officer pressed him for a last name, the man told him he used to have a last name but lost it. The officer decided he had a nutcase on his hands but played along with it. "Tell me, Fred, how did you lose your last name?" The man replied, "It's a long story, so stay with me. I was born Fred Dingaling. I know, funny last name. The kids used to tease me all the time, so I kept to myself. I studied hard and got good grades. When I got older, I realized that I wanted to be a doctor. I went through college, medical school, internship, and residency, and finally got my degree. So I was Fred Dingaling, Maryland. After a while, I got bored being a doctor, so I decided to go back to school. Dentistry was my dream. I got all the way through school and got my degree, so I was now Fred Dingaling, Maryland DDS. Got bored doing dentistry, so I started fooling around with my assistant. She gave me VD. So I was Fred Dingling, MD, DDS with VD. Well, the ADA found out about the VD, so they took away my DDS, so I was Fred Dingling, MD with VD. Then the AMA found out about the ADA taking away my DDS because of the VD. So they took away my MD, leaving me as Fred Dingling with VD. Then the VD took away my Dingling, so now I'm just Fred. The officer let him go without even a warning. Ever since I retired, I have found it difficult to have an afternoon nap, which I was dreaming of all along. The doorbell kept ringing quite often every few minutes. A stream of vendors descended into the apartment complex for door-to-door sales. Hence, I hung a Do Not Disturb board made out of cardboard outside my flat in the afternoons. Yet the bell rang the next day. Someone wanted to know what it meant. As a preemptive measure, I enlarged the scope of the board to include Tamil, Malayalam, Kannada, Telugu versions, as ours was a cosmopolitan colony. The next afternoon, the bell rang. A vendor was there. "Sir, why these ugly handwritten boards? Here I have a beautiful plastic foldable board with the message printed in all Indian languages. Just Rs 250. I bought one and hung it outside from then on. From the next day onwards, there were too many callers disturbing my sleep. One by one, they came, spoke appreciatively of the board, and wanted to know where the board is available. They, too, wanted one such. As the nuisance worsened, I quietly folded and put the board in the attic. Still, there were callers to inquire what happened to the board. Was it stolen? Nowadays, I do not sleep in the afternoon. I have joined the board-making unit as a salesman and take great sadistic pleasure in disturbing people taking an afternoon nap. A rather old-fashioned lady was planning a couple of weeks' vacation in Florida. She also was quite delicate and elegant with her language. She wrote a letter to a particular campground and asked for reservations. She wanted to make sure the campground was fully equipped, but didn't know quite how to ask about the toilet facilities. She just couldn't bring herself to write the word toilet in her letter. After much deliberation, she finally came up with the old-fashioned term bathroom commode, but when she wrote that down, she still thought she was being too forward. So she started all over again, rewrote the entire letter, and referred to the bathroom commode simply as the BC. "Does the campground have its own BC?" is what she actually wrote. Well, the campground owner wasn't old-fashioned at all, and when he got the letter, he couldn't figure out what the lady was talking about. That BC really stumped him. After worrying about it for several days, he showed the letter to other campers, but they couldn't figure out what the lady meant either. The campground owner finally came to the conclusion that the lady was and must be asking about the location of the local Baptist church. So he sat down and wrote the following reply. "Dear Madam, I regret very much the delay in answering your letter, but I now take pleasure in informing you that the BC is located 9 miles north of the campsite and is capable of seating 250 people at one time. I admit it is quite a distance away if you're in the habit of going regularly, but no doubt you will be pleased to know that a great number of people take their lunches along and make a day of it. They usually arrive early and stay late. The last time my wife and I went was 6 years ago, and it was so crowded we had to stand up the whole time we were there. It may interest you to know that right now there is a supper planned to raise money to buy more seats." They plan to hold the supper in the middle of the BC, so everyone can watch and talk about this great event. Cole. I would like to say it pains me very much not to be able to go more regularly, but it is surely not for lack of desire on my part. As we grow older, it seems to be more and more of an effort, particularly in cold weather. If you decide to come down to the campground, perhaps I could go with you the first time you go, sit with you, and introduce you to all the other folks. This is really a very friendly community. John and Jimmy, 2 Army officers, were driving along a street in Christchurch in an Army truck. John looked in one of the shop windows and saw a sign that caught his eye. The sign read, "Suits $5 each, shirts $2 each, trousers $2.50 per pair." John said to his pal, "Look at the prices. We could buy a whole lot of these, and when we get back to Burnham, we could make a fortune. Now, when we go in, you stay quiet, okay? Let me do all the talking, because if they hear us use army slang, they might know we're out to make a few bucks." "Okay, John, I'll keep my mouth shut," said Jimmy. They go in, and John says in a posh voice, "Hello, my good man. I'll take 50 suits at $5 each, 100 shirts at $2 each, and 50 pairs of trousers at $2.50 each. I'll back up my truck ready to load them on, old chap." The owner of the shop said quietly, "You guys are soldiers from Burnham, aren't you?" "Well, yes," said a surprised John. "What gave it away?" the owner replied. "This is a dry cleaner." His request approved, the Bulletin newspaper photographer quickly used his mobile phone to call the Townsville airport to charter a flight. He was told a twin-engine plane would be waiting for him at the airport. Arriving at the airfield, he spotted a plane warming up outside a hangar. He jumped in with his bag, slammed the door shut, and shouted, "Let's go!" The pilot taxied out, swung the plane into the wind, and took off. Once in the air, the photographer instructed the pilot, "Fly over Mount Stewart and make low passes so I can take pictures of the fires on the hillsides." "Why?" asked the pilot. "Because I'm a photographer for the Bulletin," he responded, "and I need to get some close-up shots." The pilot was strangely silent for a moment. Finally, he stammered, "So what you're telling me is, you're not my flight instructor?" Two old friends were just about to tee off at the first hole of their local golf course when a guy carrying a golf bag called out to them, "Do you mind if I join you? My partner didn't turn up?" "Sure," they said, "you're welcome." So they started playing and enjoyed the game and the company of the newcomer. Partway around the course, one of the friends asked the newcomer, "What do you do for a living?" "I'm a hitman," was the reply. "You're joking," was the response. "No, I'm not," he said, reaching into his golf bag and pulling out a beautiful Martini sniper's rifle with a large telescopic sight. "Here are my tools." "That's a beautiful telescopic sight," said the other friend. "Can I take a look? I think I might be able to see my house from here." So he picked up the rifle and looked through the sight in the direction of his house. "Yeah, I can see my house all right. This sight is fantastic. I can see right in the window. Wow, I can see my wife in the bedroom. Ha ha, I can see she's naked. Wait a minute, that's my neighbor in there with her. He's naked too." He turned to the hitman. "How much do you charge for a hit?" "I'll do a flat rate for you, $1,000 every time I pull the trigger." "Can you do 2 for me now?" "Sure, what do you want?" "First, shoot my wife. She's always been mouthy, so shoot her in the mouth." "Then the neighbor. He's a friend of mine, so just shoot his willy off to teach him a lesson." The hitman took the rifle and took aim, standing perfectly still for a few minutes. "Are you going to do it or not?" said the friend impatiently. "Just be patient," said the hitman calmly. "I think I can save you $1,000 here." Yes. Jack wakes up with a huge hangover after attending his company's Christmas party. Jack is not normally a drinker, but the drinks didn't taste like alcohol at all. He didn't even remember how he got home from the party. As bad as he was feeling, he wondered if he did something wrong. Jack had to force himself to open his eyes, and the first thing he sees is a couple of aspirins next to a glass of water on the side table, and next to them, a single red rose. Jack sits up and sees his clothing in front of him, all clean and pressed. He looks around the room and sees that it is in perfect order, spotlessly clean. So is the rest of the house. He takes the aspirins, cringes when he sees a huge black eye staring back at him in the bathroom mirror. Then he notices a note hanging on the corner of the mirror written in red with little hearts on it and a kiss mark from his wife in lipstick. "Honey, breakfast is on the stove. I left early to get groceries to make you your favorite dinner tonight. I love you, darling. Love, Jillian." He stumbles to the kitchen, and sure enough, there is hot breakfast, steaming hot coffee, and the morning newspaper. His 16-year-old son is also at the table, eating. Jack asks, "Son, what happened last night?" "Well, you came home after 3 a.m., drunk and out of your mind. You fell over the coffee table and broke it, and then you puked in the hallway and got that black eye when you ran into the door." Confused, he asked his son, "So why is everything in such perfect order and so clean? I have a rose and breakfast is on the table waiting for me?" His son replies, Oh, that! Mom dragged you to the bedroom, and when she tried to take your pants off, you screamed, "Leave me alone, I'm married." Broken coffee table. $239.99. Hot breakfast, $4.20. 2 aspirins, 38 cents. Saying the right thing at the right time. Priceless.